Very good morning, friends. So, I hope you're all doing safe and healthy. Well, I started off with a series on Index 109 and typically dealing with the concept of ECL, the expected credit loss. And if you recall, I had given you a three-step model, and we have already dealt with the step number one, where we were looking in terms of which approach is applicable to which particular financial asset. At the first case, we decided that which financial assets are covered under the purview of this particular index. And then we identified, that which approach are you going to apply to which particular financial asset. Now, today in this particular video, I'm going to basically take the step number two, but not in entirety. And the step number two is that we're looking at, is there a change in the credit risk? And that would result in an ECL, an expected credit loss. Now, there are a couple of things, what we need to understand in the step number two. The first thing which we need to appreciate in this particular case is that, there are two things. One is making an assessment of a credit risk, which would be done at the initial recognition. And the second is that you're looking at in terms of the change in the credit risk, that is comparing the credit risk at the inception and comparing the credit risk at the end of the year. So when I use the word change, I think that is, of course, quite indicative that I am looking at not the credit risk at the inception, initial recognition, but I'm looking at the change in the credit risk. Now, I think at this particular stage, it is also very relevant to tell you that as you've seen that there are two approaches dealing with ECL. One is called a simplified approach and one is a journal approach. Now, this step number two is something what we need for a journal approach. Because in terms of journal approach, we need to further decide, that what we're going to see later, that we need to consider a probability of default. And that is based on, either a 12 months or a lifetime ECL. Now, this is something what, we're going to take later. But right now in this video today, I am basically going to discuss, a very simple example just to give you directly what is an expected credit loss. How do you actually calculate an expected credit loss? And then we're going to come to some more aspects of the step number two in terms of, the change in the credit risk later. Let's find this out in detail. जो बच्चे अपनी तैयारी कर रहे हैं मई 22 और नवंबर 22 के लिए, उनके लिए सीए फाइनल ग्रुप 1 के सभी सब्जेक्ट्स के लिए बैच शुरू होने जा रहा है 14 जुलाई को, यानी कि कमिंग वेडनेसडे। और इस बैच के अंदर आपके ग्रुप 1 के सभी सब्जेक्ट्स कवर करेंगे इंडिया के टॉप एजुकेटर्स, और जिनमें मैं आपके साथ ले रहा हूँ फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग। अमित पोपली सर आपके साथ लेंगे लॉ, राहुल मलकान सर आपके साथ लेंगे एसएफएम और खुशबू सांघवी मैम आपके साथ लेंगे ऑडिट। बैचेस के अंदर कोई क्लैश नहीं है और इन बैचेस को आप लाइव अटेंड कर सकते हैं। यदि मान लीजिए क्लास मिस हो जाती है तो आपके पास रिकॉर्डिंग्स का एक्सेस रहता है, जिनमें कोई व्यूज़ लिमिटेशंस की कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। तो अपनी तैयारी को आप एक ही सब्सक्रिप्शन की मदद से आप इसके अंदर सारे सब्जेक्ट्स अवेल कर सकते हैं। तो आप सिस्टमेटिकली अपने सब्सक्रिप्शन ले सकते हैं और इन सब्सक्रिप्शंस के लिए आपको बस कुछ नहीं करना, एक कोड इस्तेमाल करना है जिस पर आपको एक 10% डिस्काउंट भी मिलेगा। लेकिन उससे पहले आप एक नज़र इस पर भी डालें कि अनअकैडमी प्लेटफॉर्म पर बहुत से जो बच्चे हैं उन्होंने पढ़कर रैंक्स भी ली हैं, जिनमें ऑल इंडिया रैंक होल्डर्स भी शामिल हैं। और ये एक लिस्ट है, इसके अलावा और भी लंबी एक लिस्ट है, आप भी इसके अंदर शामिल हो सकते हैं। और जैसे मैंने कहा कि आपके बजट को जो प्लान सूट करता है, आप इसकी सब्सक्रिप्शन ले सकते हैं। और इस बैच का जो डिस्क्रिप्शन है, डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में आपको इसका लिंक मिलेगा। और जब आप सब्सक्रिप्शन लेते हैं तो आप मेरा कोड इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं CAKB10। इससे आपको इमीडिएटली 10% डिस्काउंट मिल जाएगा। जो भी आप प्लान लेते हैं उसके बेसिस पर आपको 10% फ्लैट डिस्काउंट मिलेगा। कोड इस्तेमाल करना है CAKB10। तो आइए मिलकर लेट्स क्रैक इट। Let's have a look at an example, what I've taken, which deals with the measurement of a expected credit loss. Now, the example gives us that on the 1st of July 2018, A Limited provides a 2-year loan of 500. We've kept the figure small just for convenience. Then he says the loan carries interest at the rate of 10% per annum, which is payable annually. The principal is repayable at the end of the second year, and then it says on 31st March 2019, which is the balance sheet date, the company A Limited estimates that if the borrower defaults, the estimated cash flows of the loan would be as under. Now, you can see carefully, what we are doing in this exercise. We've taken the first column as the dates. Now, in this particular column, what I have taken both the contractual dates and also the date when the expected cash inflows will happen. So like, for example, if you consider that what is the date when the contractual cash flows will arise, in this particular case, since the loan is taken on the 1st of July 2018 and the interest is payable annually, so we can say the first contractual date is 30th June 2019. When on 500 rupees, if you consider a 10% interest, it works out at 50. So we made a second column which tells us that on a particular date, which is the contractual date, what is the amount you have to receive. Thereafter, we can see that after the period of 2 years, that is, 30th June 2020, you're going to receive not only the interest but also the principal amount. So you can see on 30th June 2020, we've taken an amount of 50, which is the interest, and the principal of 500. So what we've done in the second column, we've identified, the figures which are the contractual cash flows, which you are supposed to receive on the pre-decided dates. But in the third column, what the company has done, the company would actually, list down that what dates are you going to get this money. It's not necessary that you would receive the money on the contractual date. And let me tell you, even if you receive the money on the contractual date, but a certain amount is received on a contractual date and a certain amount is not received on a contractual date, even if the sum total of the contractual cash flows and the expected cash flows is equal, but the amount is coming on a different date, it would still lead to an expected credit loss. I'll come to that point again, after the end of this example. So in the third column, what the company has done, they have listed down, what is the expected cash flows on different date. So considering that on 30th June 2019, we're not going to get any cash flows. Let's say we're going to get some money on 30th September to the extent of 30. We're going to get some money on 31st December to the extent of 20. Then we're going to get some money on 30th June 2020 and some money on December 21, which is going to come out of the collateral security as well. Now you can see very distinctly that there is a difference in terms of the contractual cash flow column and the expected cash flow column. Now, if you compare the two columns, without considering any time value money, you can easily zero down that the shortfall is 70. But when you calculate the expected credit loss, we are supposed to apply the concept of time value money. So what we're going to do in this case, we'll go date-wise. Like for example, on 30th June, you are supposed to receive 50, but you didn't receive anything. So we need to calculate the shortfall on 30th June 2019 and discount it to the time value of money. Similarly, on 30th September, we received an inflow. Now this is not a shortfall, this is like a surplus. So you can see what I've done. I've taken the shortfalls and the surpluses on each and every date. Now, whether it's a contractual date when you were supposed to receive the money or the date when you're actually expecting to receive the money. So on the date when the contractual cash flows are greater as compared to the expected cash flows, you get a shortfall. And if it is vice versa, you're going to get a surplus. So we're going to discount all the surplus and the shortfall to the time value money, and we get the figure which is to the extent of 90. Isn't that surprising that in absolute figures the amount of loss is representing 70, but when you consider the time value money, then it is coming to even more than the absolute figures without discounting. But the amount which is calculated based on the ECL model is supposed to be, after considering the differences in the contractual cash flows and the expected cash flows and discounting them to the time value of money. Well, this was just a very basic input to give you so that we get started in terms of how the expected credit loss is computed. There's more to come in the coming videos on the same very step number 2. Keep watching. Thank you and bye-bye.